Hello everyone. We'll continue with the self-management skill number 1, which is a very important skill of stress management. Now you are all aware that life presents us with all kinds of stresses, either on a daily basis or over the span of our lives. Now, stress is our reaction to events that come into conflict with our desires and expectations. So we have a little misinterpretation of what stress is as being equal to the events that happen in our lives, and usually events that we don't desire. However, stress is not a result of the events, but a result of our reaction to events. And we can be stressed by sometimes very important things, and sometimes we can become stressed for very little things. So stress has become this catch-all word that accompanies every physical or mental problem, from fatigue to hair loss. Whenever we cannot determine a kind of sickness that we have, we blame it to stress. Now, it's important to notice that stress continues in our mind even after a stressful event has finished. And this is an important aspect of stress that I would like you to understand and to work through in this module and in this video. Now, stress affects us at two levels. On one level is the bodily level, and it results in a decrease of the immunity system. So yes, we are more prone to various illnesses when we are stressed and we are not at our optimum immune level. The other aspect of stress is the psychological level, and our mental health is severely affected by a lot of different types of stresses. So at the psychological level, we feel strain and imbalance, negative emotions of anger, frustration, sadness that can turn into depression, anxiety. So stress has this important effect on our daily life and our functioning. So sometimes it is in our power to change the outside circumstances that cause us stress, but sometimes it is not in our power to change those circumstances. And what we can do in that situation is to work on our minds, to change our perspective. And I'm not saying that I'm going to teach you how to accept unbearable circumstances, but more to shift your mind towards trying to change those things that you can and working to accept those things that you cannot change. Because whenever we fight certain circumstances, that causes a lot of stress. That affects us negatively at a bodily and a psychological level. Now, mind is one of the biggest stress producers. You might have heard it before, and it seems unbelievable because we think that what causes stress is life itself and all the events and the timelines that we have and the kids that we need to raise and the relationship that we have to navigate. And yes, it is true, but the way we interact with all these aspects of our lives is conducive to stress. Now, you can remember that I will offer you in this course a lot of exercises and strategies that are supposed to reduce your reactivity to stressful events. So the mindfulness and meditation exercises will greatly reduce the way your mind reacts to events. So there are these two levels. And Rick Hanson, who is a neurologist and who talked a lot about mindfulness and how our brain produces stress and how we can use the power of meditation and mindfulness in order to change the way our brain functions, he talks about events as the first darts. So the first darts that produce stress, so the first pain that comes to us, is coming from the external events, such as financial worries, strained relationships, life changes, and many other aspects of our lives, health issue. The second level is the mind reaction, and Hanson calls these as the second darts. The second arts are our reactions to these outside events, and they can manifest themselves as frustration, anger, shame, or fear. So these are difficult emotions that you will learn more about in our fifth video about self-management. So what happens with these emotions is that they do not become reduced after an event passes, but they increase because they create certain neuronal connections that we will repeat at the next event, and then we will repeat again at the following similar event. So we tend to every time we experience an unpleasant event, to re-experience all other unpleasant events that happened to us in the past. That's at an emotional level. So our minds continue to create stress even after these stressful events have passed. And Robert Sapolsky, who is a researcher studying stress and our reactions to stress, wrote a really funny book called Why Zebras Don't Have Ulcers. Now, his argument is that animals have these instantaneous automatic reactions, like the fight or flight reaction, in their brains when a danger comes. But quickly after the event, their bodies come to normal. However, in the case of people, because our brains are so developed, the stress reactions that we feel, so the fight or flight reactions and the hormones that are produced in the body and all those physiological changes that happen when we feel a danger, they do not stop after the event has passed. The mind continues to replay the scenarios that happen and continues to keep us sometimes in a permanent state of stress. So, for example, there are people who experience anxiety, anger, or depression for decades. So they continue to keep that stress in their bodies, and then that stress starts to affect them in a negative way because their minds continue to work on stressful responses and to take the bodies into a stressful response. So I am not saying that you should start mistrusting your mind, but I'm saying that you should be able to work with your mind in order to reduce your stress. And this is part of our, let's say, process when we go to counseling, when we go to psychotherapy, to reduce the internal stress that we feel inside. So a lot of internal fighting between different parts of us, or the perception that we suffer in some way, even though the reality outside shows that those events that we fear or those events that we feel suffering for actually do not happen at the moment in our lives. They might have happened at a past moment. So a lot of these psychological treatment comes to healing our reactions in the past that continue to cause us stress in the present moment. Now I want to give you some tips about stress management, and they are called the 4 A's of stress management. If you are able to follow at least some of these 4 A's of stress management, plus doing the meditation, mindfulness, and self-awareness exercises that we discuss in this course, you will start releasing some of your internal stress, and also you will become more aware of the possibilities of changing the outside stress. So one is avoid. It is, of course, not a good idea to avoid all unpleasant experiences in our lives, because that is impossible. It's impossible not to go to one form of pain or another during the course of our lives. However, you can avoid unnecessary stress. For example, you can say no when you need to say no. There are certain personalities who find it very difficult to say no to others, and they always do things. They feel frustrated, they feel tired, overworked, underappreciated, and that causes a lot of internal stress. Managing your time well is also a way of avoiding stress by reducing that pressure that we feel when we did not do the right things in the right time. The second A is alter. So this is connected to changing the way that you enter a stressful situation. So alter is either you change the circumstance, the event itself. So for example, you change your job if it's extremely stressful. You work on a relationship that causes you permanent stress. You try to, let's say, overcome your financial problems. So these are ways in which you alter, you try to change your outside circumstances. You can also change the way you enter a stressful situation. For example, be more assertive of your needs. Many of us do not express our needs to the people around us, and we want those people to guess our needs, and we feel frustrated when they don't, and that will lead to stress. So when you express your desires, you express your needs, and you communicate them to people, that reduces greatly the stress that you feel. Alter also your perspective on things. So for example, if you are more willing to compromise, if you develop mental flexibility, that will allow you to feel less stress because you will be more open to change. You will be more accepting of other people's opinions instead of having that fighting attitude that is very tiring and very stressful. The fourth A of stress management is adapt. So adapting means that we adjust, let's say, certain standards that we have. So we adjust to the circumstances that we live in. Let's say if I make a normal salary, but I dream all the time that I'm a millionaire, I will feel all the time frustrated that my salary is not enough. So adapting means becoming aware of what circumstances are good enough for you. So good enough means think of those, let's say, the place that you live in, the environment that you work in, the amount of money that you make, what kind of place and amount and circumstance you will feel satisfied with. So I'm saying satisfied is not about the ideal, because ideally we would all want the perfect world. So adapting means that you look around at your circumstances and change little things, such as, for example, changing your standard of perfectionism. Perfectionism can cause a lot of stress to people when we feel all the time frustrated that we cannot do things perfectly, that something is missing. We can reframe problems, such as feeling really rushed and being in a traffic jam, and you really feel that you're so angry and so stressed, trying to use that time for breathing, coming back into your body and meditating. So that means that you adapt to a situation. You cannot escape the traffic jam if you get really angry. Anger will only increase your suffering. So it will be that second dart that you now work yourself into a rage because you are in a circumstance that you cannot control and you wish it to be different. So the last A is accept. Now, accept is one of the most difficult parts of the 4 A's of stress management. So, as I mentioned in the quote in the beginning of this module, you need to accept the things that are beyond your control, especially trying to change the behavior of other people. Accepting means that you let things go. You accept that sometimes life is difficult, that sometimes people have motives that you cannot understand, that yes, there are unpleasant things happening to us, and we need to let down our desire to fight the negative and only take in the positive. So accepting means developing this attitude of open-mindedness and non-judgment perspective in which you don't fight your circumstances. So I hope that you will be able to use some of the 4 A's of stress management in order to reduce your stress and in order to work around stressful life events. So we will end this video here and we'll continue with self-management skill number 2 in the next video. Thank you for your attention.